My name is Jim Shrewsbury, and I'm an artist and a professor. I teach in the art department at Maharishi University of Management, Fairfield, Iowa.
It's like as soon as I met him, I thought, this guy's he's the real deal, you know? He's like really an artist, and I have a ton of artist friends.
His work just took me completely by surprise. I come from Chicago and been to New York and seen a lot of art, and I had not seen anyone doing the type of work he was doing.
I recall thinking to myself at that show, this is somebody whose work I want to know more about. There's something really extraordinary here.
Jim's work is a body of work that, at least for me, when you first see it, you immediately know it's qualitative. You immediately are drawn to it for a wide variety of reasons.
It's like there's some quality about him that he is so connected to his work.
It's always noticeable when somebody is making work that seems to be informed by a lived experience that's unique.
I think the work that I'm doing now is primarily sculpture, very influenced by the process of drawing, painting, and ceramics. But I think that it's all kind of pinned into what happens when you draw structurally. So I'm looking at shapes and how they change. Most of my work has a relationship with the wall. So those shapes, as you see them, I just set up situations with the sculpture that play with the shadows and reflections and the real material itself.
He plays a lot with cast shadows and how our body moves around the room, and when we suddenly have this aha surprise of seeing the painted cast shadow.
So this shadow is starting to become something. I find myself discovering more about what is actually there and what's perceived to be there. It points to, I think, a deeper thing that's happening with us in our lives anyway. Sometimes we think that things are some way, a certain way, and they may actually be another way when we get closer to them. Meditating changed my life. And I was a student when I started when I was a senior in college, and everything turned around. At that time, I was all right, a B student, but when I started meditating, I felt like a scrim was pulled away, and I had so much energy. I started to see things more clearly, and what I was trying to say was able to come across. I won't forget what happened to me when I started the contrast. If I'm not awake, I noticed in my own practice that I'm not taking advantage of opportunities as they come up. It's an essential thing for an artist. Being awake means being in the creative process. It means seeing free things that are happening in relation to something that is determined. It's knowing yourself. It's knowing about what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are on that day or at that moment. It may be a better time to be, if you're not feeling so well, to be sweeping the studio, and it's good to know that rather than thumping your head against the wall. You have a principle, and then the result of that is unification. Teaching is a simple thing. It's a creative process, and it's very much like the studio process for me.
I am very aware that Jim has made my education worthwhile. As a teacher, he knows where you should go and he knows how to get you there.
He's such a forceful personality in a quiet way that I think some of his students used to be really intimidated by him.
Were there any good points that you found in this syllabus? Now, if you didn't find any good points, we can make this discussion it can be over very quickly.
And he wouldn't make it easy on them in a way, like he wouldn't try to be forthcoming and nice, but I think he just let people get to know him, and then I think they really just adored him.
He kind of encourages you to basically have the mind of an artist.
He lets you do your own thing, but he gives little bits of advice, and they're so jam-packed with information.
So if the artist isn't awake, then it isn't going to happen in the same way. There's a joy of seeing what they're going to do with that. And what they come up with is often certainly worth a lot more than the time you put into teaching. This is another leap. We've been working with simple open shapes. Now this is more complex, but it'll happen and it'll be loads of fun. And as long as you don't expect too much of yourself, and let a lot of it take place on its own. Don Potts said being an artist is like being a trapper. When you're a student, you set up the trap, you're learning to build the trap, and you get one every once in a while. But as you become an artist, then you can do it more frequently because you know how to tune the trap. I think it's a powerful thing to be able to build the trap and to be able to notice the things that are coming in, but you have to continue to be awake or the trap can get old.
You know, it's almost like when you start out, you're looking through a little pinhole.
Something like this.
And then gradually, as your experience grows, it kind of expands and you're just able to see, you're just aware of what's going on more. And it's a really pretty effortless thing. Jim has a really particular way of just evoking that in people, evoking the ability to see.
It's always fascinating. It never fails to be fascinating. The inner dimension of ceramics and the hollowness of it has had a big influence on my work.
There was a sort of quietness to it without it being, at the same time, it being kind of very vibrant.
He does it in these very quiet ways that you arrive at, that you sort of find, that force you to kind of go inside in a way. Because the work, I think, really deals with the kind of interiority that, a lot of work that you see today doesn't.
They're very, very small, but they occupy a huge space.
They'll have a look as if they're very filled, and of course there's nothing inside of them, but you get the sense that the inside is just as important. This empty inside animates the surface.
Which was just remarkable to me. Look at a vase or look at a can or a box and to be able to envision the internal dynamics drawing what is not there, if that isn't physically manifest, but somehow in your own inner reality, it is.
I like this point of tangibility and intangibility and the play between the two. And that automatically is engaged when you start to move. If you're in three-dimensional space, you see something from a certain perspective and you start to walk around it, time changes and the space starts to change. Around here, it's kind of a completely different piece. And then if you come around here, it changes. You realize in the process of this action that it isn't about necessarily the object, but it's about your own perception. So not being about the object, it's about the relationships. It's about something softer.
Sometimes it's kind of difficult to read, but it always has this like really subtle, dry humor to it.
Suddenly it all falls by the wayside, and we're inside there digging around, looking, noticing all little pencil marks on the wall and this sort of meandering wire that kind of connects us, an umbilical cord.
If I looked around towards the back looked nothing like the front, so that it really compelled me to look at it very closely. And then I looked underneath, since it was on a glass shelf, and discovered that it was painted entirely differently underneath.
And the fact that you have no idea what they mean, at least in terms of the artist intent, which is absolutely fine, because you as the viewer can bring your own associations to these objects that some may be absolutely familiar, and some, even though they're familiar, take you into an entirely new place.
I think that some artists are interested in making people think. I'm more interested in slowing that down, quieting that down, so that the viewer might be left with themselves.
When you would see a piece, you started becoming aware of your own process of experiencing. And you know, you would say, oh yeah, first I saw this, and then I dug a little deeper and I saw, you know, this other piece. And all great art does that. But you know, his was doing it in a way that I hadn't ever considered before.
So they're really magical works. It's the magic in the works that has always interested me. The fact that he's also a functional potter added to that interest in his work, because I have an interest in something that it's used every day. So that was part of what drew me to his work, that he uses clay, that he's both a functional potter, but he takes that clay and does something miraculous with it.
It's come around to being focused on utilitarian ceramics that's driven by color, and these are mostly things for the table, but also they are on the wall, so they have this dual function that they become like a work of art on the wall, and then they can be taken onto the table. All the profits that come from this go to peace-creating organizations. We're also inviting painters in who usually don't work in ceramics to work on a standard platter that we make, which is 11 by 17. And we've had a few painters come in, and we're going to have more of them come in. And then we'll have an exhibition of that work and an auction.
He is working from, you know, a really sound and profound intuition. And so the work that comes out isn't going to look like anything familiar to us, because it's nonverbal, it's non-specific.
I don't think that as an artist that I isolate myself from life. It's all very connected. Even though most of my work is a studio process, it's directly connected to everything that I am in interior, and it's hopefully getting to a place that communicates that to others. So I don't really need to. It's my passion to make art. It's also my passion to live and to see that the world is a happier place. We all have to do something. I just happen to be doing this.